But what I want to do now is pass the mic around if anybody else has a story. This is Jimmy's brother, Billy. This is Billy Wilkens. He's the baby brother. Do you have a funny story about Jimmy ever? Or Ernie and the whole group?
Well, there's kind of an age gap between us all, and there's always a lot of geographical distance in our lives on the way. Of course, we're all from St. Louis, Missouri. I think you know that. And we always had a great time. I was much younger, and that was during the years when a postcard was a valuable media instrument. So we communicate by penny postcards. Now, the question comes up, how many of you were born before the year of 1945? Please raise your hand. Well, perhaps you might remember penny postcard. I have a few notes that I want to go over. I was thinking about on the way here that I wanted to talk about a lot of the things that happened along your lifetime, as well as my lifetime, when we all matured to what we are today. First of all, thank you very much, a lot better. We were born before television, before penicillin, before polio shots, before frozen food, before pantyhose and dishwashers, clothes dryers, electric blankets, air conditioners, drip dry clothing, before man walked on the moon. We also were married first and then lived together afterwards. How quaint can that be? Bunnies were small rabbits, and rabbits were not Volkswagens. Designer jeans were scheming girls named Jean, and having a meaningful relationship meant getting along with our cousins. We thought fast food was what we ate during Lent, and outer space took us back of what we know at St. Louis as the Club Riviera. That was a small jazz house that Jimmy and Ernie played at as young men with the George Hudson Orchestra. We thought that before we had house husbands and computer dating and dual careers and computer marriages, we were before daycare centers, group therapy, nursing homes. We never heard of FM radio, a tape deck, electric typewriter, artificial heart, a word processor, yogurt, guys wearing earrings. So I want to end on that note because it gets rather boring as we go along. It kind of is thought-provoking about how long time it's been since we were born. Certainly I want to thank everyone here for coming out for Jimmy and recognizing my other brother Ernie Wilkens, who deceased before Jimmy, is now buried in Denmark, Copenhagen. We're very happy to be here because my wife and I of some 58 years is here, and Miss Verna. Also, my first cousin, Perry Wilkens, his family is here. Okay. And we have some other cousins. Cynthia is here, of course, my lovely sister-in-law and her brother from Detroit, Michigan. Okay. And I can play also saxophone, Tom Hall. Where'd he go? Oh, where is Tom? Okay. Tom knows me because Jimmy sent him a message from me from St. Louis about the tune he did, I Didn't Know About You, at the Black Label Cocktail Lounge some years ago. But again, Marcia and Norm, I thank you very much for bringing us all together. And you did a really, really stellar job doing it, and we truly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Billy, everybody. All right, who's next? As Jimmy would say. Who's next? Tom, I know you've got some stories about Jimmy. Do you want to share with his family some of those stories? Nothing you can say in public? Oh. Well, I want to correct something I said. I mentioned from 1994, there are two people up on that bandstand that have been with Jimmy since 1994. And that was Doc Little and David Hale. Those two have been with Jimmy since 1994. I was thinking since I took over giving him gigs. I got a story. I told the family last night. At the E String one time, Jimmy, I was up in the sound booth and I wasn't really paying attention to who was giving him drinks and the waitress taking away that same glass and putting another glass, taking it away. I wasn't paying attention because it just looked like the same glass to me. And all of a sudden, at the end of the evening, Jimmy passed out. And it was like, uh-oh. But we didn't know, I didn't know it was because of the drinks. So we called 911. And so 911 comes and we all lift him up, we put two tables together and we laid him out on the tables. And we said, Jimmy, the MT says, Jimmy, do you know what year it is? He says, yeah, it's 2011. Okay. Do you know where you're at? Yeah, I'm at the E String. Okay. Who's the president? Obama. Just like that. He says, do you know what happened to you? The band overwhelmed me. And that's exactly what he said to those EMTs. The last story, I have lots, but this last one was, he missed a gig in July. He was sick. Oh, he had sore shoulder. And first gig he had missed in 20, 50 years, who knew? Never missed a gig. The following month, August, Cynthia calls me and she says, he's going to be there. He's taking the bus. I went, what? Because it was always this lovely lady, Louise Osiki and Tony Osiki, give a wave, that went to his house and picked him up and brought him here. There's Tony. Or it was George McDonald, give a wave. But it was somebody would always be there, but for some reason, this particular afternoon, no one happened to be available. Now, the first part of the story, can you tell it? Cynthia? Okay, I want Cynthia to tell the first part of the story.
Well, what was it? It was the first Sunday in August, and his gig is the first Sunday in each month. Well, in July he missed the gig because his shoulder was bothering him. So he didn't, that was the first time he missed a gig in 23 years. So when it seemed like everything was just going wrong for the August gig because Tony and Louise's car was out of service. Carol and James was in Detroit at a wedding, and George here was in San Diego taking care of his mother. So all of his rides were not available. So I told him, I said, well, okay. I told him, I said, Jimmy, well, you've only missed one time in 23 years. He said, but I want to play. And so I said, well, if you miss, it's okay. The guys can do the gig. So he's like, no. So he got on the phone and called Para Transit. That's the company that will pick you up and take you, where you want to go. So he called them and got an appointment for them to pick him up at 12 o'clock because his gig started at 1. And it was a good little distance for him to go. And they would bring him back home a little after 4. So, okay, about 5 minutes to 12, the bus was there to pick him up. They loaded the scooter onto the bus, and they left.
So she phones me and she says, Jimmy's taking the bus. I said, what? So she went through the story that she just told you and said, but he wants to be there. He took the bus. I said, okay. What time do I expect him? She says about 12:30. I said, okay. So the band comes in and we set the band all up like we did today. And then the people start coming in. They'll come in, they all get their seats, a little more organized than today, but pretty organized. They come in, they get their seats, and so the time goes by, and pretty soon it's 15 to 1. It's 10 to 1, no Jimmy. 5 to 1, no Jimmy. So I think, so I call Cynthia. I say, Cynthia, don't worry. But Jimmy's not here. Could you give me the number of the paratransit that took him or picked him up? She said, sir. She gave me the number. So I called them. And I say, did you pick up Jimmy Wilkens on Charleston near Buffalo, the Highlands, to bring him to the German American Club? And they said, oh yeah, we picked him up. He's all picked up. He's on his way. Went, no, you don't understand. There's a whole band sitting up here and in their chairs, and there's a whole audience sitting out here in their chairs, and we're waiting for Jimmy. Oh, well, let me get my supervisor. So they got the supervisor, and he checks his log. He says, oh, no, they picked Jimmy up. He should be there any minute. He says, no, you don't understand. He's not here. Well, he should be there any minute. I promise. I said, okay. I hung up. We waited. 10 after 1, 15 after 1. I called him back. He's not here. Well, let me get my other supervisor. So I got another supervisor, and he says, oh, let me look. Oh, he says, that bus has been in an accident. What? So I'm like panicked. And he says, well, everybody's okay. We're sending somebody over to assess the situation. Oh, okay. So how long before you assess the situation and get him back here? And they said, well, it'll take about 20 minutes. Okay. So I wait about 10 minutes because I want to see him before I call Cynthia back. He's not there. So I call him back again. He's not here. We're having the head guy. He's going to pick him up. He's going to bring him there himself. I says, well, you might get booed a little bit when you walk in here. I said, everybody's waiting. So I came back in. I called Cynthia. I said, okay, they're on their way. And I told her about the accident. She went, and I said, no, everything's okay. They've assured me everything's okay. So as I walk back in from making the phone call, here comes Jimmy through the front door. Michael Evans' mother, give a wave. She heads him off at the pass, and she's got watermelon and orange juice and water, and she's feeding it down him just to make sure it's a hot day. I mean, August. Oh, it was 120. It was miserable. So we didn't know if he'd been sitting in a hot bus, what the story was. So she's taking care of him, and she gets him all juiced up. And then in the meantime, I had told the band, he's not going to be here a while. Because he missed last week and he's gone to all this trouble to get here, what do you guys say if we just kind of wait till he gets here to kick off? And Tom Hall and everybody said, oh, absolutely, let's do that. So when he does arrive, he says to the guys, he says, well, how come you didn't just go ahead and kick off? And the guys all said, no, we're waiting for you to get here so you can kick us off. Oh, okay, that's fine. So he gets in front of the band, and the band's ready, and he does 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and boom! The band kicked off. He's grinning. So when he got home, oh, wait a minute, there's another group here. The Wilsons here. Mom, raise your hand. Mother Mary made cookies that day for Jimmy. So she handed out cookies to the band and whatever was left to the audience to appease everybody and keep them nice and sweetened up. And so she did well. Thank you, Mother Mary. So when Jimmy, go ahead, give her applause. She deserves it. This is how much we all are family and we love Jimmy. We all look out for him. There's Mr. George here that always took care of him. And Louise and Tony were just premier taker-carers. So now he gets home and he's overheard talking on the phone. And do you want to tell it or do you want me to tell? Cynthia told me, and this is before Jimmy passed, she told me, I overheard him on the phone. He was talking to someone. She says, I don't know who, but he says, when I walked in, everybody stood up and applauded me. The band stood up and applauded me. He says, then they waited till I got there to kick the band off. Then I kicked the band off. He says, they really care. He says, I was just overwhelmed. And he was. And that's how much this audience loves Jimmy, loved Jimmy, will always love Jimmy. Give him a hand because he can hear us up there. I'm positive. Anybody else have a story? Oh, come on, don't be shy. Nobody. What was your favorite song that Jimmy would play? Somebody yell it out. But beautiful. Judy Grill over there. But beautiful. We have Joanne Gilbert here, who supported Jimmy right to the nth. She put together the legendary tribute to Jimmy before he got out of retirement. So give it up for Judy Gilbert. Judy. Joanne Gilbert. What else? These are the band wives tables. You know, the band wives, they give a lot up too when these musicians come to play. But Jimmy always said, make sure they have a place to sit. You know, make sure they're taken care of. And I'd say, okay, absolutely. And I love the band wives. They are super supporters of these young men that play in this band. And it's not like Jimmy's band got paid a lot. When we first started out at the Black Label, it was $5 a head. There's 16 guys in the band. They were lucky if they got $10, $12 a piece. But they loved playing with Jimmy. And I would cry, remember, as I would hand out the money. So sorry. Then we raised it to 10. Then we raised it to 15. And it was at 15. We were up here for a couple years. It was great. Great room. You like this room? It's nice. Nick Willows owns the restaurant in there, and he would always make sure Jimmy had just the right amount of sauce. to take care of him. Water. Anyway, there's a tribute table over there, and I see people have brought some things. Please go over, peruse the table. Remember Jimmy, remember him as he was, remember him as he will always be. And trombone in his hand and singing mumbles. Anything?
When you talk about mumbles, Clark Terry, who started mumbles, and the story, which is true, that Clark was in the band with the Johnny Carson show, Tonight Show, and they used to do Stump the Band. So somebody in the audience would say, "Do you know X?" You know, and then somebody in the band say, "Oh yeah, I know it," and then they'd get up and do something silly, you know, make up some lyrics. So one night they did Stump the Band, and so this person said, "Do you know something?" And Clark Terry says, "Yeah, I know it." And Clark Terry stood up and started doing mumbles. And that's how mumbles became mumbles. And then he recorded it, of course. And then he and Jimmy had been friends since they were like 18 years old. And well, actually before that, because they were in high school, but they were in different schools. Jimmy was in Sumner, and Clark was in, what's the other school, Billy? What's the other school that, Vashon, right? Vashon. Yeah, Vashon. So, but they recruited Clark to play in Sumner's band. So that's how they became friends, like when they were 16, 17 years old. And they were friends forever after that, right up until the time that Clark died. We would always stay in contact with him. And one time we were in New York, and Clark was working in the Blue Note, not the Blue Note, anyway, it's jazz club. And so naturally we went down to catch the set. And so Clark said, "Jimmy, come on, let's do mumbles." And you talk about funny, those two, because they could mug. I used to say they had a St. Louis thing of mugging, you know, like one would say something and the other one would be like, and making faces and mugging. And the people just thought it was unbelievable that Clark Terry and this guy doing mumbles. It was a wonderful night to remember, really. But Clark and Jimmy and Ernie were the best of friends all of their lives. Yeah. So that's the story of mumbles.
How many have phoned me, I know there's a few out here, and said, "I can't figure out the age between Ernie and Jimmy. It sounds like Jimmy was older than Ernie." And I said, "No, I don't think so." So I called Cynthia. This is going to be the first time in history you're going to hear the truth. I'll let Cynthia tell you.
You know, they have the Encyclopedia of Jazz, and Ernie is listed in the Encyclopedia of Jazz as born in 1921. And he has the brother, Jimmy, who then naturally would be younger brother would be 2 years younger than him. But Jimmy actually is the younger brother, and Ernie was lying about his age. And at one time, includes Clark Terry again. Clark, I'm telling all your story. Clark was in Detroit doing a concert, and after the concert, we naturally went in Clark's room at the hotel, and we're talking, you know. And so Clark says, "Jimmy, who's the oldest, you or Pud?" Because that was Ernie Wilkens' nickname, Pud, because it was always Pud and Jimmy, because they were very close growing up as brothers. And Jimmy said, "Ernie's the oldest." So Clark picks up the phone now, but this time Ernie's living in Copenhagen, Denmark. Clark picks up the phone, dials. Calls Ernie in Denmark. Now it's midnight in Detroit. So I don't know what time it is in Denmark, but it's like early morning, I guess. And Ernie answers the phone, and Clark just says, "You jive, mother." All these times you've been talking about you were the youngest. And he said that Ernie just laughed, you know.
So all those stories about the age, there's the answer. You jive. I won't say it. But so now you can all, if anybody mentions this to you, you know the truth, right? You got it from one of the horse's mouths. So.
You know, with the encyclopedia, well, it was in the encyclopedia, so it must be right, you know. Not necessarily. They can only put what people tell them, right?
But now you know the truth. So, they were close. Well, we all know Jimmy certainly talked about his brother a lot, and he loved all the arrangers. And I put together a little book for the family. I'm not going to give you guys the book, it's just for the family, but I can tell you to go to jazzwax.com. Jazzwax.com. And he has a list of everybody that he's interviewed. His name is Mark Meyer, and Jimmy Wilkens is listed in there, and you can click on Jimmy Wilkens, and the whole interview will come up. Mark used to call Jimmy and chat with him on the phone, and Mark and I have stayed in touch for several years, and so he gave me permission to put this book together for the family, and so it won't go out to anyone else. And it's all the history of Jimmy, in his words, of who he's played with, who he's been with, who he went with after this, the mail job,
Actually, it starts with Jimmy from childhood, you know, where he was born and where he went to school. It's a very thorough history of he and his brother and the relationship he had with other bands and musicians. So it's all the information you could ever want about Jimmy Wilkens. So Mark did a wonderful job. I mean, and he has become a friend. He really has become a friend, too. So if you go on Jazz Wax, you can find out not only about Jimmy Wilkens, but a lot about other musicians that you might have, been interested in.
So any musician you might be interested in, but especially Jimmy, you'll hear his whole life, like she said, from childhood all the way through jazz now. Jazzwax.com. Well, it looks like they're filtering back up. Did everybody eat and enjoy their food? How many did not order, want to still order? Okay. Sure. So thank you, everyone. There's still more to come. I don't know if any musicians are here that play in the band that aren't in the band today but have played in the band. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? I have one more Mumbles, if you want to hear it, and he introduces the band. And in the band, he introduces members that have gone on ahead of him. And so I can play that one more time for all of you to listen to Jimmy's Mumbles.
One, two, three. What you talking about, Willis? It was a dark and stormy night. Oh no, that's Snoopy. Friends, Romans, and countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Sealer, not to please him. Oh, no, that's me. It's just a dagger I see before me. Come, let me clutch thee, Ivanhoe. All the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole. I thank whoever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. Invictus. And days
Okay, Jimmy's now going to be introducing the band of members that have passed. So listen to this.